Have you ever noticed how some thoughts repeat themselves endlessly, even when you try to ignore them? They return at night, in the silence, in the shower, and the more you fight against them, they seem to be getting stronger. In this video, you will understand the psychology of those who get stuck in repetitive thoughts. Why does the mind enter this cycle, and especially what almost no one explains to you about how to break it? Stay until the end, because the last part reveals the invisible mechanism that keeps your mind looping, and when you understand that, everything changes. Subscribe to the channel now, because here you learn how to master your thoughts before they master you. There is a type of silent suffering that inhabits the minds of millions of people around the world, an invisible torment that leaves no physical marks but slowly corrodes inner peace and the ability to fully live in the present moment. We are talking about those thoughts that return incessantly, like waves that always crash against the same point on the shore, wearing down the rock of our mental sanity. They are ideas, worries, memories, or questions that repeat in an infinite loop, creating a vicious cycle from which it seems impossible to escape. To truly understand the psychology behind this phenomenon, we need to delve into the depths of the human mind and understand the mechanisms that transform a simple thought into a mental prison. The human mind is an extraordinary machine, capable of processing thousands of pieces of information simultaneously, creating magnificent works of art, solving complex problems, and experiencing profound emotions. However, this same powerful tool can become our greatest adversary when it begins to work against us. Repetitive thoughts, technically known as mental rumination, are like a scratched record that always plays the same part of the song, preventing the melody of life from continuing to flow naturally. This condition is not simply a matter of lack of willpower or insufficient mental control, but rather a complex neurological pattern that is established through various psychological, emotional, and even biological factors. When a person becomes entrapped in repetitive thoughts, what is happening at the brain level is both fascinating and frightening. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for analytical thinking and problem-solving, enters a state of hyperactivity, constantly trying to find solutions to issues that often have no immediate answer or that were resolved long ago. Simultaneously, the amygdala, our emotional processing center, remains in a state of heightened alert, interpreting these recurring thoughts as real threats that need to be constantly monitored. This dialogue between different brain regions creates a self-perpetuating closed loop of neural activation, making it increasingly difficult to interrupt the flow of obsessive thoughts. The origin of these mental patterns often stems from our personal history and the formative experiences that shaped our personality. Often, people who develop a tendency toward mental rumination grew up in environments where uncertainty was constant, where danger was unpredictable, or where their emotional needs were not adequately met. A child who needed to be constantly vigilant to predict the mood of a volatile parent, for example, develops a hypersensitive nervous system and a mind that never fully rests. This pattern crystallizes and becomes part of the individual's psychological architecture, manifesting in adulthood as a compulsive need to repeatedly analyze situations, conversations, and events in an attempt to gain control over a world that once seemed chaotic and threatening. Perfectionism is another crucial component in the psychology of repetitive thoughts. People with perfectionistic tendencies set unrealistically high standards for themselves and live in constant fear of failure or judgment. Every social interaction, every decision made, every word spoken becomes material for meticulous analysis later on. The perfectionist mind obsessively reviews past conversations, looking for mistakes, for things that could have been said differently, for signs of disapproval on others' faces. This relentless pursuit of perfection in retrospect is like trying to rewrite a book that has already been published, a futile exercise that consumes precious mental energy and prevents the person from being present in the moment. Anxiety is an inseparable companion of repetitive thoughts, creating a symbiotic relationship where each element feeds and strengthens the other. When someone is anxious, their mind desperately seeks certainty, assurances that everything will be all right, that there are no lurking dangers. However, the world is inherently uncertain, and life offers no absolute guarantees about anything. This discrepancy between the need for certainty and the reality of uncertainty creates an unbearable psychological tension that manifests through obsessive thoughts. The person begins to mentally review all possible scenarios, all potential outcomes, all the things that could go wrong, in the illusory hope that by thinking about everything, they will be able to prevent any negative outcome. It's a desperate attempt to control the uncontrollable through the power of thought. Trauma plays a fundamental role in establishing repetitive thought patterns. Traumatic experiences create deep scars on the human psyche, fundamentally altering how the brain processes information and responds to stimuli. When something deeply disturbing happens, the mind tries to process the event repeatedly, as if by revisiting the experience again and again, it could somehow alter it, understand it better, or find a meaning that makes the suffering bearable. Victims of trauma frequently report intrusive thoughts related to the traumatic event, vivid flashbacks, and an inability to simply let go of the past. The traumatized brain remains trapped in a state of incomplete processing, where the mental file of the trauma remains open, demanding constant attention and preventing new chapters of life from being fully experienced. Depression adds another layer of complexity to this phenomenon. While anxiety tends to focus repetitive thoughts on the future, depression anchors them firmly in the past. The depressive mind incessantly revisits perceived failures, missed opportunities, relationships that ended, decisions that led to undesirable outcomes. There is a cruel, self-flagellating quality to these thoughts, an internal narrative that emphasizes inadequacy, failure, and hopelessness. The person becomes trapped in a cycle of negative thoughts that generate depressive feelings, which in turn produce more negative thoughts, creating a downward spiral that seems endless. The energy that could be used for engagement with the present life is drained by this constant rumination on a past that cannot be changed. The role of unprocessed emotions in this context is absolutely crucial. Many people who get stuck in repetitive thoughts are actually avoiding feeling difficult emotions that have been suppressed or never adequately processed. The human mind has a limited capacity to tolerate intense emotional discomfort, and when emotions like deep sadness, anger, shame, or guilt become overwhelming, the psychological defense mechanism may be to direct attention to the compulsive thought instead of the direct feeling. Thinking about something, analyzing it, trying to solve it mentally may seem more controllable than allowing oneself to fully feel emotions that seem too great to bear. So the repetitive thoughts function as a form of emotional anesthesia, keeping the person occupied in their head so they don't have to descend to their heart. Contemporary society, with its obsessive emphasis on productivity, efficiency, and constant optimization, creates fertile ground for the development of repetitive thought patterns. We live in a culture that values doing over being, that celebrates constant mental activity, and treats moments of quiet as wasted time. Social media exponentially amplifies this tendency, creating endless opportunities for social comparison, for analysis of how we are perceived by others, and for concern about our public image. Every post becomes a reason for rumination. Every comment is dissected in search of hidden meanings. Every lack of response is interpreted as potential rejection. This constant connectivity keeps our minds in a perpetual state of activation, preventing the moments of mental rest that are essential for processing experiences and consolidating memories in a healthy way. The human need to make sense of experiences is another powerful driver behind repetitive thoughts. We are meaning-making beings, constantly trying to weave coherent narratives about our lives, explain why things happen as they do, and find patterns in the apparent randomness of existence. When something happens that challenges our understanding or doesn't easily fit into the narrative we've constructed about ourselves and the world, the mind can become obsessed with trying to solve this puzzle. An unexplained rejection, a missed opportunity for reasons we don't fully understand, a conflict that ended without a clear resolution, all these events become mental fixations. The mind returns to them repeatedly, trying different interpretations, building and deconstructing explanations, hoping to finally find a narrative that brings peace and closure. The human need to make sense of experiences is another powerful driver behind repetitive thoughts. We are meaning-making beings, constantly trying to weave coherent narratives about our lives, explain why things happen as they do, and find patterns in the apparent randomness of existence. When something happens that challenges